is translation? Check this out.
Definition of translation. Translation is a branch of applied linguistic part of activity in communication between humans in different language. Translation means having to do with transferring content or ideas from the source language to the target language. This means the message of ideas becomes a central aspect of the translation. To produce a good translation, the translator must refer to meaning as the main idea in the source language, or SL, for trans into the target language, or TL. In light of the above, there are 18 translation techniques proposed by Molina and Albir. Number 1 is adaptation. This technique is used to replace a source text, culture, or social element with one from target text, which more familiar for target readers. Example, SL, Dear my lecturer Kamer. TL, kepada yang terhormat dosenku Kamer. This technique is known as culture adaptation techniques. Dear is kepada, but in our culture at Indonesian, kepada yang terhormat refers to the honorable ones for formal something. This technique is done by replacing culture elements that have source language with similar culture elements in the target language. Number 2 is amplification. This technique is employed to introduce details that are not formulated in SL by adding some word or information, paraphrasing, making it explicit, or creating footnote to make the translation clear and help target readers understand the text. Example, SL, Ramadan, TL, bulan puasa kaum muslim. Ramadan is translated into bulan puasa kaum muslim, which means the special fasting month of the year for Muslim to the world. The application of this technique will help the target readers have the idea about the meaning. Number 3 is borrowing. This technique is used to take a word or expression straight from another language. There are 2 types of borrowing, that is pure and natural borrowing. Pure borrowing refers to the work of SL, which purely loaned by TL without any change. Example, SL, mixer and hard disk. TL, mixer and hard disk. Number 4 is cult. It is a literal translation of correct word of praise, and it can be lexical or structural. Example is L is Vice President of Indonesia is Ma'ruf Amin. TL, Wakil Presiden Indonesia adalah Ma'ruf Amin. Vice President is translated into Wakil Presiden. According to Vinay and Dalbernett, cult and borrowing often become fully integrated into the TL. Number 5 is compensation. This technique is to introduce and is a stylistic effect element of information in another place in the TL because it can be reflected in the same place as in the SL. Example, Good morning George, TL, Selamat pagi Paman. If a nephew want to greet his uncle, he may call his uncle by using his name George, but in Indonesian, it's not acceptable to call uncle by just name because it is considered impolite. Therefore, instead of the adherents translate into Selamat pagi George, the acceptable one is Selamat pagi Paman. Number 6 is description. This technique uses description to acceptable to be word or expression from SL. which is not understood in TL. This translation technique is done by replacing the words in the search language with the target language description. Example, SL, I like lapet. TL, saya suka lapet, makanan khas Batak yang dibuat dari tepung beras. This technique, by replacing a term or phrase with a description of its shape and function.
Hello, I'm Putri Anjali Simangunsong. Now I will continue to explain translation technique. I will explain from number 7 to number 12. Okay, we will get started. 7. Kreasi diskursiv or discursive creation. A translation technique, it is like original context. This technique often appears to translation titles of books, novel, and the films. Techniques are used to attention of potential readers. And this technique, it is like similar to proposal technique. Okay, for example, search language, the good father, and target language, the sang good father. 8. Padanan lazim, or established equivalence. Translation terms in such language with familiar terms. In the such language are generally based on dictionary. For example, such language, sincerely yours. Target language, hormat kami. 9. Generalisasi or generalization. Translating with the terms already common and now wide community. This technique in the search language refers to a specific part. Equivalent in the target language doesn't exist. For example, search language, penthouse or mansion. Target language, tempat tinggal. 10. Amplifikasi linguistik or linguistic amplification. A translation technique that adds linguistic elements to such language text in target language text. This technique often used in interpreting or dubbing. For example, such language, everything is up to you. Target language, semuanya terserah Anda sendiri. 11. Kompresi linguistik or linguistic compression. A translation technique collects element linguistic in such language text. This technique often used in interpreting, dubbing, and subtitle translation. For example, such language, are you sleepy? And target language, kamu mengantuk? Penerjemahan harfiah or literal translation. A translation technique that transfer in expression in such language word by word in target language. It doesn't relate to the context. And for example, such language, killing two birds with one stone. Target language, membunuh dua burung dengan satu batu.
Number 13. Modulation. This technique is employed to change the point of view, focus or cognitive category in the relation to TL. Example, SL, I cut my finger. TL, jariku teriris. Number 14. Particulation. It is the opposite of generation. Therefore, this technique creates TL more specific, concrete, and precise than CL. Example, CL vehicle, TL becak, bajai, bemo, dan delman. Number 15. Reduction. This technique is opposite to implication, which signifies that it separates information item of ST into TT. This is including omission and implication. Example, CL, a car accident, TL, kecelakaan. Number 16. Substitution. This technique is used to substitute a paralinguistic element, sight, gesture, into a linguistic element or vice versa. Example, CL, both Japanese bow to each other. TL, ketika orang Jepang saling memberi salam. This example, both Japanese bow to each other, translate into ketika orang Jepang saling memberi salam. This technique is usually used in interpreting the CL. Number 17. Transposition. This technique is employed to change grammatical categories. It is including a shift of class, unit, structure, and level or rank. The following example is changing the word class from noun pitch English into verb berdamai Indonesia. Example, SL, I have no control over this matters. TL, aku tidak dapat mengendalikan hal ini. Number 18. Variation. It's referred to the change of linguistic or paralinguistic element, intonation, gesture, which affect the linguistic variation such as style, change of textual tone, social and geographical, dialect, and others. For example, change of dialect indicator for character when translating for the theater. SL, I hate you. TL, aku benci kamu.